Good afternoon, everyone, members, officers and members of the public joining us today. Welcome to this meeting of the Climate and Environment Advisory Committee. My name is Councillor Dr. Lisa Redrup, Chair of the committee. To my left is Councillor James Rickson, and to my right is Councillor Jeff Harvey, who are Vice Chairs of this committee. I'll introduce other attendees when I invite them to speak. Before we get to the main items on the agenda today, we start with apologies for absence. Habs, are there any apologies, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillors Bunty Waters, Tumi Hawkins and Ariel Khan, but Councillor Khan has sent a substitute. We've got Councillor Peter Fain with us today. And then also apologies from Councillor Natalie Warren Green. Apologies, yeah. So, yeah, thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Next is declarations of interest. Do any members have interest to declare in relation to any items of business on this agenda? Okay, great. I can't see anyone, but if any interest subsequently becomes apparent later in the meeting, please would you raise it at that point? Next is item 4 on our agenda, which are the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 2nd of September 2025. Does anyone have any comments they'd like to raise on those minutes, please? No, I can't see anyone. I didn't have any either. So can I take the approval of the minutes by affirmation, please? Oh, sorry, Councillor Khan.
I'd abstain because I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so great. We were just approving the minutes of the meeting, so I think we've agreed that we can take them as a record of the meeting. Thank you, everyone. So the next thing is public questions, which is item 5. We've not received any public questions for this meeting, so we'll move on to item 6, which is the local nature recovery strategy. And today we're looking at whether we approve it for advancement of publication by the Secretary of State. And we have John Cornell presenting this item. John, can I please hand over to you?
Thank you very much, Chair. I have a presentation I'm going to share with everybody online. Should be about 15 minutes, unless I speak quickly, so I'll go ahead and share that.
Thank you.
Always fun. Okay. Thanks for bearing with. So, local nature recovery strategy for Peterborough and Cambridge. I'll refer to it from here in as LNRS, just for the presentation. So, some context first. Why is this important? Indeed, it's important because I don't appear to be able to advance my slides. That's probably why it's important. Just bear with me a minute, sorry. That one, yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Oh, there we go. The magic happened. Thanks, Ellie. So the context is, as we're all aware, England is one of the most nature-deprived countries in the world. And to make things worse, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough are one of the most nature-deprived areas in England. So the context of a strategy that has a high-level vision isn't just important, it's critical for us. This nature recovery strategy, or NRS, builds firmly on the Lawton principles of better, bigger, more, and joined-up interventions for nature. And this is something that the strategy hopes to achieve through things like stepping stones, better connectivity across the landscape, buffering important areas and restoring areas. And this is something that is written throughout the document and presented in different ways. We've seen major declines in biodiversity in our part of the world because of things like intensive agriculture, development, peatland drainage in the fens, and all these things have contributed to us having, as I've already said, a very low baseline from which to start. So having something which is county level and that's had input from ENGOs, supporting districts and other stakeholders is incredibly important. This is a recent snapshot of some data that we got on tree canopy cover. Tree canopy cover is, or can be, used as a proxy for biodiversity. What's interesting, I think, about this particular image, which shows the district of South Cambridgeshire, is that the two areas which have the highest amount of canopy cover are Bar Hill and Cambourne. Who would have known? Who would have suggested? Who would have guessed? Because these, of course, are areas which were, in terms of Cambourne, it was only been here about 30 years. I think it was a carrot field before that, and certainly Bar Hill a couple of decades before that. So these are areas which were developed, new housing developments, and now they are showing that they have the highest areas of percentages for canopy cover. So I just thought that's quite interesting, because obviously we think of development as removing biodiversity. In fact, over time, because of the tree planting in these areas, we've seen that it's produced these high areas of canopy cover. So the LNRS is a new duty under Section 40 of the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act, or the NERC Act. This was amended by the Environment Act in 2021, and now it requires all public authorities to conserve and enhance biodiversity. And the LNRS at its heart is essentially a statement and a map. That's how it's described. Of course, what we've ended up with is not just a statement and a map. We've ended up with something which is approximately 150 pages of text in two different documents, and a series of different maps contained within a web portal where you can go in and you can turn things on and off. And that's both useful and relevant. I think just an example of that would be these two screenshots which I took. So on the left, you have areas which are currently important for biodiversity. Important to say that that screenshot just shows really South Cambridgeshire, a little bit of the rest of the county there to the north. But these are areas like sites of special scientific interest, Ramsars and the like. That's the existing nature that we have. And on the right, you've got areas which could become important for biodiversity, and you can see there's much greater coverage of those, but therefore a lot more potential for us to do things which can make a difference and are useful for nature and for people as well, of course. One question that we've had is, what will the influence of this strategy be on the local plan and on planning in general? And so it will influence quite significantly planning through things like site allocation decisions, where we put growth, moving it away from areas of high value nature and recovery zones. Of course, biodiversity net gain, which we've talked about many times in this committee. So biodiversity net gain is the primary delivery mechanism through the planning process for nature recovery for the LNRS. Things like Section 106, planning conditions, also relating to habitat creation, and green corridors will also form an important part of this moving forward. And of course, the local plan, as that's updated, will require that it's demonstrating consistency with the LNRS with regards to where it's placing development and growth. So in short, the LNRS is a strategic level ecological map and an evidence base that planners will need to refer to when considering environmental impact of development. And so I think it's quite important in that regard. The process has been a 2-year journey, essentially. It started with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, who were the authority that were given the jurisdiction or the responsibility for advancing this. They devolved that responsibility to the County Council. So the County Council team have been taking this forward and have done a jolly good job, I think. They've been supported by all of the districts, City of Cambridge, City of Peterborough, ENGOs, National Farmers Union, other stakeholders. Pretty much everybody's been at the table. So it has been a very thorough process involving steering group meetings, involving workshops, involving technical input. It's been round and round and round, and here we are now. DEFRA have also been at the table, so obviously the government have been represented. This map, just briefly, it's national character areas, which are shorthand for landscape types. And I think it's interesting because it shows that South Cambridgeshire has a variety of different landscape types from the southeast up to the northwest. The process, as I said before, has been all-encompassing. It's involved speaking to landowners, local authorities, nature conservation groups, hosting workshops, looking at existing evidence base and considering that. And so the LNRS team broadly engaged with stakeholders over this 2-year period to essentially deliver something which we think is now fit for purpose and to be taken to the next step, next level. Within the existing evidence base are the priority landscapes for Cambridgeshire. These were originated, I think, in the year 2000 by the Cambridge and Peterborough Biodiversity Partnership. And these are essentially places where nature's clinging on across the county, those locations where the best quality habitat still remains, and therefore opportunities to enhance and protect it remain. What we can do is we can overlay that map with biodiversity net gain offset sites, for instance, just to see how they align. And we can see that about 50% of our BNG offset sites sit within those priority landscapes. So that's a good thing, but it also means that we're extending that enhancement, protection of nature out into the wider countryside where we've got an awful lot of farmland and where we can do perhaps other things with that land. I've already mentioned the Greater Cambridge local plan, so again, this has been a number of questions about this. As the local plan's been developed, it's essentially been developed in parallel with the LNRS, along a pretty similar timeline actually. And so, as we've developed the evidence base for the local plan, the evidence base for the LNRS and the meetings around the habitats and the species have advanced at the same pace. And so I think it's important to say that there's join up between those two things, and we don't expect any nasty surprises to come out of the publication of the LNRS and of course the new local plan as that's released. I think on the 1st of December, the public will get to see that. So briefly, a little about the consultation. First local authority consultation ran in the summer. There then followed an 8-week public consultation in the late summer. And then the CPCA Growth Committee approved the final LNRS document on the 5th of November. And the final local authority consultation runs between the 26th and the 24th, or 26th of November and the 24th of December. What that means is that there's been an awful lot of opportunity for folks to have input into this, not just local authorities, but members of the public and organisations alike. And so it's not something that's taken hold behind curtains. It's been out there in the public realm. The opportunity to comment and to have some kind of input into this has been there. And I think what's going to happen in the next phase, which will be implementation, will be really more of a hands-on approach. What can we do? Where can we do it? And who can we partner with to get that work done? Just a little bit of a brief snapshot. These are the consultation events which ran through the summer. You'll see that they took place across the county at various different times in July and September. And the public consultation, it's just some basic stats. If I went into detail, we would be here till 7 o'clock, so I'm not going to do that. Participants, interestingly, one might ask oneself whether this is a representative sample of the demographics within our county, within our district, and I think the answer is probably no, but there it is. That's the demographic profile of the respondents. Predominantly over the age of 45, predominantly white, pretty even split between male, female, and various other interesting statistics there, which are all contained within the report. Some of the barriers to delivery which were flagged were there are concerns over funding. Indeed, there's still questions about funding implementation, resourcing, monitoring and enforcement. There were some public doubts about the integration with wider planning frameworks and also whether development pressures, including housing and infrastructure, might be a risk to delivering this. So people were alive to the risks, I think, and that came through in the consultation responses. This is, I think, another interesting one for South Cambs. There we go, with 38.8% in the map in the lower right-hand corner there. We seem to have a higher response rate than other districts in the county. I can't speak to why. Maybe we're just more aware or something, or more engaged. I wouldn't like to speculate. But there was strong support for the LNRS. 74% of respondents agreed that it clearly sets out how to improve nature recovery in the region. If I overlaid this map with one of the outputs, which was changes to the mapping, we can see that, again, the district of South Cambridge is quite densely populated with proposed changes to the mapping actions which came forward. And again, up in the north-east there, Fenland district had the lowest. Of course, that does align with the previous map, which I've just shown, so it could be a function purely of the volume of responses rather than anything more mystical than that. So, outcomes, briefly, the county sifted 409 respondents' comments to ensure all respondents' individual comments had been considered. The comments were split into key areas such as species, habitat mapping, emails and editorial. Some of these things were just dealt with very quickly by the county team. They didn't go to the steering group for consideration. They weren't sent to our technical specialists for consideration. The county team dealt with it because it was straightforward and it was quick to do. A total of 114 editorial changes, quick wins, which didn't require a technical steer, as I've said already. Some of the outcomes, again, strong public and stakeholder support for the LNRS. Confidence does appear low in delivery, but we haven't got to talking about implementation yet. That will be a conversation for 2026, and quite how that unfurls is yet to be seen, but it will be key, obviously. Success depends on collaboration, targeted outreach and practical mechanisms, and I can't stress enough that the need for partnership working going forward to implement what's coming out of the strategy. We can't do it on our own. We need to work with the NGOs and the other stakeholders to deliver whatever's going to happen on the ground. So next steps, I'm coming to the end of the presentation, you'll be pleased to know. Next steps, local authority consultation period, as I've said, between the 26th of November and the 24th of December. And essentially, the mechanism would be, it's a pretty straightforward question at this point. Do we, as a supporting authority, agree that the process and the output of this LNRS is in keeping with what we'd expect and is fit for purpose, or we do not? It's a binary question. If we do not agree, then ideally you'd have to go back to CPCA and start to negotiate, and I think you'd have something in the region of, well, not many days to do that, so I wouldn't suggest that that's the favourable outcome, but that's how it would work. We either agree that it's fit for purpose and it's good to go to Cabinet, who would then recommend it for publication by the Secretary of State. So that's the way that the next steps work. So LNRS must be approved by all supporting authorities. If one has a problem, then they have to negotiate that. It can't just sail through. As I've said, due to be seen by this Cabinet of South Cambridgeshire on the 2nd of December for approval. The Secretary of State will publish, ideally, December 25 or January 26, and then the fun begins. The implementation, that's when we can get our teeth into, as I've said, working with partners and deciding where we're going to do things, what we're going to support, what doesn't work and what does. So, in a nutshell, from vision to delivery, it's a fabulous opportunity for us to continuing our important doubling nature work through partnership. Use the convening power of the council. We might not be large landholders, but we've got convening power, and I think that would be an important lever to pull. And of course, we have to look ahead to local government reorganisation that's coming down the tracks pretty swiftly, and the opportunities perhaps to enhance county-owned assets, for example. That's just an example. So that's that. I'm going to hand over to Ellie briefly now to talk you through the last slides. Thanks.
Yes, thanks, John. Sorry, I'll just go. Yeah, so just to provide, I guess, a little bit of clarity here, because there's a lot of documents which are sort of have been out for consultation or are imminently out for consultation. sort of in the near future. So just to provide a bit of clarity on these three documents. So the LNRS, which is obviously the document which we're talking about today, the Greater Cambridge Local Plan, which will be out for consultation imminently, and then the Climate and Nature Strategy, which has, the consultation for that has now closed, and which we'll be bringing to the next SEAC meeting. And so this diagram just sets out the overlap and the overlaps between these three documents, but just to clarify the distinction between these three here. And just to follow on from that, just touching on how this relates to the wider action on biodiversity in South Cambridgeshire, and indeed the actions in the Climate and Nature Strategy and Action Plan. So the report which Kathy is going to bring later within this meeting is the Biodiversity Duty Report, and that is sort of distinct from this item here, and that's to be published in January 2026. So just to provide clarity that that's something a bit separate, but that will provide a wider overview of the district's biodiversity actions as a whole. And just to clarify as well that our future actions, which will take account of and align with the LNRS, will be included in the action plan of the Climate and Nature Strategy moving forward. So that's kind of how they will link together. But I just wanted to provide a bit of clarity around the distinction between the LNRS and the Climate and Nature Strategy, and the Local Nature Recovery Strategy will define those actions which end up going within the Climate and Nature Strategy and Action Plan. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, John.
Not really, just to, well, he says not really, then contradicts himself immediately. But just to say, how do we go back? Do you know, we go forwards. How do we go back? We go back. There we go. Just to say thank you. What I've put in the middle of this Venn diagram is delivering biodiversity net gain and green infrastructure, because, in my mind, at least, these are the things which knit together all of these different areas of work: the LNRS, the local plan, and the doubling nature agenda. Having BNG and GI at the heart of that, because it overlaps with all of them, I think is just a key thing to keep in mind as we go forward. And with that, I would just say thank you and ask if you have any questions.
Thank you, John, for the background, and thank you, Ellie, for setting it into context for us. Peter Fain, would you like to ask a question or a comment? Sorry.
This point of, I don't know what to call it, but could everybody please use the mic properly? It's difficult to hear.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you both for that. Two questions, one just purely technical. The consultation ends on the 24th of December, but Cabinet is due to consider it on the 2nd of December. Is this because there's a tight deadline for Secretary of State approval, the LNRS I mean, of course, in January, or is there scope for, you know, if particular comments come in during the later stage of that consultation, for those to be considered by Cabinet? That's just in passing. The key question, John, you said that BNG was central to this, and I recognise that. The problem with the biodiversity BNG action is that, of course, we're in the hands of the developers, that it is up to them whether they do it on-site or off-site, and if they do it off-site, where they do it. And it's not clear to me, to be honest, how the amount of BNG required will meet the supply, how the demand will meet supply. And because it's quite difficult to make additional sites available, even though landowners are now beginning to catch on to this as a potential source of income, which can supplement their declining income from farming. And I just wondered how we deal with those points. Thank you.
Okay, I'll deal with the first question first, which is the timeline is highly constrained. You're absolutely right. The timeline is highly constrained, partly because there were delays in the LNRS process through the early part of this year, for reasons I won't go into. They just, things got complicated. Detail was focused on and the big picture was somehow left behind, I think it's fair to say. We did play catch up quite well, and so we now find ourselves up against a deadline that's been set by DEFRA for publication by the Secretary of State. Now, in fact, these committee meetings are quite constrained in terms of time as well, because you don't have, if you did have a big issue with something within this document, then there's really not much time to negotiate. In terms of actually, therefore, negotiating additional time, I'm unclear. We've had this question to our DEFRA representative before, and the answer I think that came back was just make it happen. I would be surprised, to be fair, if there were big issues, because I've said it's had so many pairs of eyes on it. It's been through public consultation. It's been before this committee before. It's been looked at by everybody. The changes that were made between, and this is one question which did come up last time, what changes have been made? We could spend the entire afternoon picking through the changes to field boundaries, and right, so that's not what we presented. What we presented today is pretty high level, and I think is representative of the process and of the output. Obviously, within the papers for this committee were contained the LNRS document and the mapping for you to look at. So I would be surprised if there were any major objections, but of course we don't know. That's the first part. The second part, B&G. So the thing to remember about B&G is that for our large growth sites, and in fact for larger developments, it can be quite adequately delivered on site. We don't need to look to offset providers in distant parts of the district to provide biodiversity net gain. And in fact, the way that things are working out so far is that we have off-site. We also have Section 106 delivered on-site biodiversity net gain at I think about 12 or 13 locations this year. And we also have an awful lot of conditioned biodiversity net gain within site boundaries, which is much harder to track because it's not covered under Section 106. It's just there, and we need to find a way to check on it. So I think it's fair to say, Councillor Fain, that B&G is being delivered across a variety of different delivery mechanisms. It's not, you hear about the off-site stuff because that's the big headline, but it is being delivered across a number of different interventions by developers.
Are you happy with that answer, Councillor Fain? Great, thank you. Can we go to Councillor Peter Sanford next, please?
Thank you, Chair. A challenge for you. Can you flip back to the slide that shows the number of individual responses to the consultation? Understood. My impression was the number of discrete responses was fairly small with respect to the population of Cambridge and Peterborough. Do you feel that number is significant, 358, significant enough to go ahead and say everyone was approving, or do we need to work a bit harder in future consultations to get more responses?
I think you're absolutely right, and I think I said that when the slide came up. It's not a representative sample, would be my take. I'm not a specialist when it comes to survey science, but knowing the population of the county, the demographics of the county, the age, it's not representative, but this is what we have to work with.
Okay, thank you. As long as that's been noted, I think we can move ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we go to Councillor Paul Bear Park now, please?
Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple of points. First one is just on that point of the consultation responses. I think John was very modest. I think the fact that South Cambs had 39%, of the responses probably, I think the environment team, the communications team can probably take some credit for that. The other point I wanted to make is, I suppose the elephant in the room here is possibly the government's planning an infrastructure bill, which I think is potentially undermining what is being done on LNRSs. The criticisms of it are that it weakens legal safeguards for existing habitats, and it does provide developers with a kind of pay-to-damage mechanism. And I think, again, the criticisms have been that proposals are misguided, because only 3% of appeal cases, planning appeal cases, state wildlife as a reason for developments being rejected or blocked. And here in South Cambs, the LNRS map shows where nature recovery can deliver the most benefits in things like chalk streams and fen edge and green corridors. But the centralised offset fund of the bill would allow developers to essentially pay to damage those sites and make good somewhere else. And so that's kind of undermining the place-based kind of nature recovery that we're looking at here. So I'm not really expecting officers to comment on that, but that is my perception of things. Other people may want to comment on this as well. Maybe Councillor Hawkins on that topic. But from what I've seen, the Planning and Infrastructure Bill is a bit of a wrecking ball when it comes to LNRSs.
Oh dear. Is there anyone who would like to come back on that? Comments?
Well, just to say, it's not through Parliament yet, is it? It's not fully approved. It's been backwards and forwards, and there's talk that Lords might overturn. So until we see it, we don't know. But it's a good point. It's a fair point, absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Baerbock. Can we go on to Councillor Bhattacharya online now, please?
Can you hear me now, or I put my question on the chat box?
Oh, we can hear you,
so
but
that
is it in the chat as well?
yeah. So first of all, thank you, John. Thank you very much, and I really like the how you begin the starting that you just make a global recognition of England and how it is a green and the rural landscapes. And in Cambridge, and then also you said that, but locally we are failing that in Peterborough in Cambridgeshire. Then we mainly here attract the tourism because of the university buildings and the ancient cathedrals. And also we have a very big challenge ahead. Every 10 days we hear about around 5,000 new homes are coming. It is always being proposed. So I put my question there, that how do you, because in your last slide, I also found that you have a doubling plan in the last slide where you showed. So my question, how do you plan to achieve this goal when we are simultaneously, continuously losing our, where you said that Greater Cambridge doubling nature aims, I really like it, but what will be your delivery, because we constantly losing our agriculture and green land towards the civic developments?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bhattacharya. I believe your question is, how do we double nature? How do we meet our objective in the plan to double nature? Thank you. Mr. Connell, could you help us with that?
I'll have a go. Thank you for your question. So doubling nature was something which we addressed in an earlier presentation. I'm not quite sure when it was, but essentially the doubling nature question comes up all the time. What does it mean? How do we get there? In 2015, a number of people met in the David Attenborough building from, I think, convened by Natural Cambridgeshire and others, Wildlife Trust, and came to the view that the 8% of land in Cambridgeshire which was managed for nature was too low, as we've already discussed and we understand, and so we needed to get to 16%. Theme came from, and it's been used in a number of different ways. With relation to this particularly, so doubling nature is it a strategy for South Cambs, or it's not a strategy, it's a target. It's a target. Thank you. Want to speak to that?
Yes, and I can, so in the previous doubling nature strategy, there was a target to double nature, and I will just touch on the climate and nature strategy. So the draft climate and nature strategy, which is the stage that it's currently at, sets out, well, so for South Cambridgeshire specifically, it defines that doubling nature target and what that means for South Cambridgeshire. And so this is obviously a draft target, but that defines it as going from 7% to 14% of land managed for nature. So that's what it sets out and what it aims for. And it also sets out a series of accompanying actions related to how we will start to double nature, and that includes actions all across the council, includes things like supporting parishes and supporting community groups with what they can do, but also encompasses the actions within the planning team around BNG as well. So that strategy sets out some of the actions that we have proposed. Obviously, with the local nature recovery strategy specifically, we aim to align and work with the other authorities in the county to make sure in the implementation of it, and making sure that we're sort of aligning with any actions that are being undertaken there. And then finally, just to note that in Kathy's biodiversity duty report, which will be set out later, there is a summary of a lot of the actions that we've been doing to date, and a bit of an evaluation and potential areas for future work looking forward as well. So that report will contain some of the detail on the actions which we'll hopefully look to take in the future.
Thank
Yeah,
you, John. Would you like to come back, Councillor Bhattacharya?
Yes, I'm putting my question here again. So the doubling nature doesn't mean that we are actually touching the national average, because that's the first slide and the second slide was on that. Like, United Kingdom is a globally recognized for its landscape and the green landscape, and for that, but particularly Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is lacking the national average. So here my question, so that when we say the doubling nature aim, does it mean that we are actually fulfilling the national caps of the bar, or how far we are still behind? Is the question clear? Because at one point we said Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is far behind that national average greenery that UK has, and we do not have. We just agreed with on that point. So how behind we are, like how back or how behind in that terms and conditions?
I can have a go at that. So it's important to say that doubling nature doesn't just mean doubling the amount of land managed.
Yeah, correct.
It also means improving the quality of the habitats which are there, enhancing that habitat, and because of that, it becomes very, very difficult to actually use some kind of metric to measure quite how much. If we were just looking at going from 10 hectares to 20 hectares and, job done, tick the box, but we're not. It's much more complicated than that. And I think the other important point to make is that this is an aspiration, it's a target, and it's a goal. And it really depends on a number of other factors. It depends on things like what the national government comes up with in the planning and infrastructure bill, and whether that hobbles us in any way with regards to our work for our large growth sites. It depends on LGR, which is coming down the track. I sound like I'm making excuses, but the reality is there are so many variables which are some opportunities but also challenges for us that it's impossible to say and to pin down. So a good example would be, as I've said, at the county level, it was decided, or it was agreed, going from 8 to 16%. That was 10 years ago. 10 years ago. I don't think we've made, at a county level again, sorry, I know I don't want to confuse matters, but at the county level, I don't think we've made huge leaps and bounds towards that goal of doubling nature in 10 years. So to try and ascertain quite whether we're going to be on target to do things within the district within the lifetime of the next local plan, for instance. I think I wouldn't want to take a guess. All I can say is that I think with the best intentions and the tools, the resources, the political desire,
Changes.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's a difficult question to answer, I think.
Thank you. You started your slide. Anyway, thank you so much. You tried.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you everyone. We're on to Councillor Toomey Hawkins now, please.
Thank you, Chair. If I may just go back to the question on how far are we and, what do we mean by doubling nature? If I take us back to our 2021 doubling nature strategy that we launched then, the idea was that our vision is to double nature in South Cambridgeshire by 2050. Okay. And in so doing, enable wildlife and people to thrive and businesses to prosper, which means more wildlife-rich habitats, an increase in tree canopy cover, and better accessibility to green space. And these are all the things that we're trying to develop or deliver through the applications for development that come to us. Not to mention, we've had the 6 free trees scheme. You see, I pronounced that without going over my tongue, which is our little way of encouraging communities to actually try and increase the tree cover, in their communities where they've got land. So we are trying, but we don't know how far we are. We are aiming for by 2050. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that. And actually, my question, which I was going to ask, was about measuring. If we go back to page 171 of our report, where it talks about monitoring and measurement. Now, I note we're talking about periods of 10 to 20 years. That is a long time. But then I guess my view is that too long? Why is it 10 to 20? Why not maybe 5 to 10? So at least we can see if we're making progress. If we're not making progress, then maybe there's time to do something rather than wait 10, 20 years and then go, oh, this isn't working. I was just curious as to why it was 10 to 20 years, not a shorter period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. I'll have a guess. So some habitats take much longer than others to reach climax. So, for instance, woodlands take a long time. And we know from our biodiversity net gain work that if we're monitoring the growth of woodlands, new habitats, that essentially you go back after 5 years and you've got a slightly larger tree, you go back after 6 years, right? So you need that long period of time to ascertain, yes, they actually delivered a woodland. They delivered a woodland in keeping with what was promised from a biodiversity perspective, from a sustainability perspective. It's still alive. It's not, it's not died after the first couple of years. So there's a temporal element there when it comes to the types of habitat. But also, I think, because this is a strategic document and it's dealing with strategic landscape level interventions, that you need long periods of time. You can't always get quick wins done in a couple of years, would be my guess. So the first point, not such a guess. The second point, probably a bit of a guess there.
Okay. Thanks for that. It's just, my feeling was we shouldn't leave anything to chance as best as we can. As far as the infrastructure bill goes, who knows? I mean, we're waiting for the government to decide what it is they're going to put and when. I know they're in a hurry to get things done within this parliament, but the question is what? And we just had some news yesterday that Mr. Reid wants to call in applications that are more than 150 houses if they're going to be refused. That's just something that they make announcements, but we're not seeing things delivered. They're going to, make an announcement back then and nothing's been implemented. So who knows? But as soon as we know, you'll be the first to know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hawkins. Can we go into Councillor Jeff Harvey now, please?
Yeah. Style of, oh, sorry. Oh, is that better? Yeah, so a reasonably intensive style of agriculture in South Cambridgeshire, I think. I'm not an expert. And so when we change anything in a sort of significant way in terms of the number of hectares that we consume, so one of the concerns that comes from the public is this term food security. And I wondered to what extent and whether the survey responses sort of managed to tease this out, to what extent that food security concern is sort of affected by what the proposed new use is. In other words, is there actually a pushback on creating natural habitat because of that concern, or does that concern typically only sort of raise its head when we're talking about a new development or, you know, solar farm or wind farm or something like that?
Thank you. Another great question. I think that when it comes to the process, we did have the NFU consistently coming to the steering group meetings, attending the workshops, and were very well represented by Rob Wise. And so we did hear a lot of concerns from the farming community, as we have had about biodiversity net gain offset sites also taking up farmland. And I think the short answer is that there are opportunities to farm differently. There are opportunities to incorporate interventions for biodiversity and for nature into farming methods, supported perhaps by government schemes like ELMS. I'm not quite sure where that is in terms of its crossover with LNRS, but there are certainly opportunities to do things differently. As you've rightly said, this part of the world has had intensive agricultural, industrial levels of agriculture since the end of the Second World War. There are different, perhaps better ways of farming which can recognise the value of nature as well as bring forward food production. So that would be my hope. Yeah.
Thank you. Then back to Councillor Bearpark, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to share an example of some kind of nature recovery or lack of in my ward, which is an example of how difficult this can be. So in my ward is a triple SI, which is currently recorded by Natural England as unfavourable no change. So really quite poor at the moment. Been campaigning on it for a couple. It's an important site for migratory wading birds. We've been campaigning on it for the past couple of years, and really, you know, there's very little happened in order to try and recover this site, because what's happened to it is that it hasn't been managed and it's dried out, so it's no longer suitable for these wading birds. And the challenge, you know, seems to be that, you know, Natural England are trying to encourage the landowner to kind of remediate this land, and they've been suggesting the landowner applies for a particular fund, but the current fund is closed, so it's just not moving anywhere. So even when you've got a triple SI, which is, you know, should be one of those sites that you would hope would be one of the priorities, it's still really difficult, and it's still what Natural England call stuck in stage 1 remediation. I don't know how many stages there are, but and I suppose my question is the LNRS going to provide any support or assistance with nature recovery specifically relating to triple SIs, or are those absolutely in the hands of Natural England?
These questions are getting harder. I'm not sure I have an answer to that, and I would be guessing, so I don't want to do that. what I would say is that I think there's a recognition that, it's probably not the answer you want actually, but there's a recognition that we need to do more in the wider landscape. The condition of existing sites which are already protected, such as SSIs and SACs and European sites, it is problematic when the funding isn't there to maintain them. But I think the LNRS, if we're just going to sort of redo what we've already done at those sites, it's sort of missing the opportunity to do more in the wider landscape and to connect those sites perhaps. And maybe through connecting them, you can see some kind of recovery, maybe in some instances. But I think the value of the LNRS is in looking beyond site-specific conservation, island habitats, which get smaller and smaller and degrade over time. And if we can connect those through the wider landscape, through better, different farming interventions, then we take a landscape approach and we have a better chance of protecting and enhancing our nature, I think would be my perspective.
No, thank you very much for that. I think, you know, one of the things that I've kind of learned through this process over the past couple of years is how important landowners are and how important it is to get them on board. And I guess it will be the same with the LNRS as well.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Fane.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just looking at the slide on the screen there, and woodland is not necessarily the answer to all of our problems, but we do have a problem even in my own ward, which is Shelford focuses more on chalk grasslands. We're below the national average, and we have a number of wards where we really have to tackle this issue. Now, the other day, 5th of November, the Secretary of State announced a new national forest, which is undefined area, but within the Oxcam arc, and the exact area is still to be negotiated. The national forest is 500 square kilometres, so there's obviously scope for, at the very least, extending Marston Vale and maybe coming into South Cambridgeshire. The timing is not good in terms of the LNRS, but is that a factor which we need to take into account in the LNRS and in doubling nature strategy?
Absolutely. I think the recent announcement of the desire to site a new national forest in what used to be called the Oxcam Arc, I'm not sure what it's called anymore, it's something else.
I'll call it that.
Is welcome because I think we are, in terms of trees and the geology and the soils that would support that kind of, obviously, if we were talking about the fens, it would be a different matter entirely, but this part of the county, that part of the district, the western part from Camborne, I think would support that kind of intervention and would join up very nicely with the Forest of Marston Vale in Bedfordshire. And so, yes, there are discussions, active discussions ongoing with the head of the Planning Service, Stephen Kelly, and others with regards to how we might facilitate that. And it would be very welcome, absolutely, and appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Martin Khan, my apologies that we missed you.
Really, I wanted to comment, as a comment I made earlier when this came forward, was that this covers the problems and the different characteristic areas, but it doesn't actually define how you're going to implement it. And I'm glad to see when it came to, I was observing as rapporteur on at the Growth Committee meeting, and that they were talking about a delivery plan, a next stage. I think that's particularly important, but it's obviously not part of what we're approving now, but I think it is very important. I tend to agree with Councillor Fane about about biodiversity and again, and what it can offer. It can offer, it's very valuable, it's something direct, which we have direct control of and we can impose, but the scale of it is actually going to be, not going to sort the problem out. It's a small part of it. And we need to, so that any delivery plan needs to look about how it will be implemented and what you could do. What hasn't tend to be done in this area, and which will be very important under local government reorganisation, because under the new authority we'll have both land and powers, and it will have probably have a green spaces team, which we don't have here. We haven't had for many years. That's historic, it's unfortunate, but it wasn't something we could do on our own, but in the new situation that would be. So it's important that, and this, if the deadline, if the timetable that's proposed goes ahead, this plan will cover part of the time which we are managed by the new authorities. So we do need to think about covering the situation if it covers under the new situation. There are other powers that local authorities can use, including one which South Cambridgeshire has not used, which is local nature reserves. There are 6 local nature reserves in South Cambridgeshire, all done by the County Council. And I think they actually could be one of the ways, for instance, solving the sort of problem that Councillor Bearpark referred to. You would have powers. You go into a management agreement to run a local nature reserve. You could purchase land. You can actually do it compulsory, though that's really rather difficult. It had to be really crisis situations. But I've actually attended an inquiry into a compulsory purchase for land for a local nature reserve. It can be done. So you have, that's a tool which has really been underused by local authorities in Britain. And I would hope that under the new situation, you do draw attention to that in the implementation plan, because I think that really could, subject to obviously what finances are available, which is obviously a constraint, but that really could be a useful tool to be used, and I want to emphasise that. Thanks. But in terms of the plan, as it's done, the strategy and the priorities and so on, it's really a sterling piece of work.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Khan. On to James Rickson, please. Councillor Rickson.
Thank you, Chair. Would you, John or Ellie, be able to go back to the slide, where you've got the circle diagram, Venn diagram? The one that Ellie put together, where you've got the 3 strategies converging on our BNG. This is it. Yes, lovely. So, so what we're looking at here is approving the local nature recovery strategy, so that we're happy with the process and how thorough it has been. Okay, for the cabinet to take it forward. So, and that is one of the 3 mechanisms that we will be being applied across South Cambs and Cambridgeshire to deliver BNG. Then your opinion, I've got broadleaf cudweed, Cambridge milk parsley, flat sedge fly orchid, and I think there's some dandelions in here as well. So in your opinion, have they missed any important priority flowering species, or has that been extremely thorough?
This isn't the meeting to go into that kind of detail, would be my answer, because we did look at this earlier. The level of detail that's gone into in the LNRS with regards to species, so which species were proposed, which species were then decided maybe bridge too far, habitats, field boundaries, we would be here all day. So we've decided to stay at a high level. You want to start talking about species, I'm not really sure what to tell you. I think that what I can tell you is that those lists of species, interventions, be them habitat or species, have been looked at and pored over by the ecologists, not just from South Cambs, but from across the districts and the city and Peterborough and the county. So they've had specialist input, and a view has been taken. And I'm not going to give a view whether that's right or wrong. Other than to say that's what's before us.
So what I'm thinking is it seems extremely thorough, I guess, yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I can't see any more requests to speak, so I'm thinking we're coming to the end of this item. So we've heard about the long process that this has been, that there has been a consultation, although perhaps not as representative as we liked, but 75% of those people were in favour, supported the LNRS's aims. So today we're here to say whether we recommend that the Climate and Environment Advisory Committee advise the League Cabinet Member for Environment to approve the LNRS for publication by the Secretary of State. Is this something that we can agree by affirmation, everyone? Agreed? Yes. Great, thank you very much. And thank you, John Cornell, for all your answers for our questions today. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, a pleasure.
So the next item on our agenda is the Green Business Impact Programme 2024. There are some slides included within the agenda pack for this item, and Catherine Southwood is here today to present this item. I hope. Is Catherine here?
Yes.
Oh, brilliant. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Just bear with me. I'm just going to try and find my slides and hope the tech works.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for having me today. So I work in the economic development team. So you might think, well, this is a bit of an odd team to be coming to this meeting. But just to put it into context, we have been responsible for delivering the Shared Prosperity Fund and the Rural England Prosperity Fund. I'm sure many of you may have heard of those two funds. As part of this, one of the programmes we've delivered over the last few years is the Green Business Impact Programme. Again, as I've already mentioned, that this fund was funded by the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. I realised earlier that I hadn't actually mentioned within these slides that this was central government funding. So this was originally from the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities, which has now been moved over to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. So it is central government funding. The Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority were actually the lead authority for the Shared Prosperity Fund and Rural England Prosperity Fund within the whole of Cambridgeshire. Basically all the local authorities were responsible for the local level delivery. With this programme in particular, it was a combined effort with Cambridge City Council, Huntingdon District Council and ourselves, with Cambridge City Council taking the lead. The programme was set up to support small and medium-sized enterprises, and the aim of this programme was to support businesses to be able to deliver sustainable business practices, which led to the reduction of carbon emissions. So through this programme, we actually ended up procuring ALIA and PECT, who were our delivery partners on this. So again, just some of all of our logos. The ALIA and PECT were responsible for onboarding all our participants. We did actually find through the progression of the programme where the uptake was slow, actually we did provide a lot of that support. And again, through our own business support teams, actually this was really valuable in being able to secure these businesses through the programme. All participants were required to attend workshops, which again, provided businesses with awareness of climate change, and the business responsibilities in terms of supporting sustainability. The programme worked with them to kind of develop longer-term sustainability plans. So we didn't want it just to be a case of we provided the short-term information, they took that away, they were able to get a grant. Actually, what we wanted businesses to do was really consider the long-term initiatives that they could implement. And then businesses, once they'd gone through the actual programme itself, they were eligible to apply for grants up to £15,000, which I'll come on to in a minute through some of our lessons learned. So the programme supported the businesses in particular to their baseline current emissions of scope 1 and 2. There were a couple of examples where we did actually, the PECT were able to support on scope 3. As I've mentioned, there was a 5-year action plan that businesses were required to work with PECT in order to be able to apply for the grant. And then again, they had to think about their targets, milestones, KPIs and financial implications for the business. And the aims and outputs for the business was to include practical, achievable carbon reduction steps, and they needed to kind of implement sustainability, which was integrated into their core business planning and decision making. So again, we're trying to make it sure it's kind of longer term rather than short term. As I mentioned earlier, this was a combined local authority project. Overall, we had over £700,000 allocated to the project. 251,000 roughly was allocated to consultancy fees, and the remaining was allocated to grants. South Cambridgeshire District Council in itself allocated £170,000 to the overall programme. Again, £115,000 of this was allocated. I must say the grants were capital grants, so they weren't revenue grants, and there was a match funding requirement of 10%. The programme participants could only apply for a grant once they'd undertaken a sustainability plan, and grants up to 15,000 were allocated. And things like building fabric improvements, solar voltaic panels, heat pumps, etc. were funded under the scheme. And here is the list of our applicants. Some of the eagle-eyed of you may spot that actually we were awarded grants just over the £115,000. So this was, because it was a joint programme, Cambridge City were very generous. They had a little bit of funding left over. The case with the scheme was either we use it or lose it, and we really didn't want to return any of the funding back to central government. We really wanted it to be used in the local area, so they generously gave us a couple of £1,000 just so we could just fit in that one last applicant. Now there's a couple of charities on there as well. We were getting quite near the timelines that all the money had to be spent by March 2025. So again, we were quite under pressure to get the funds out the door. So we made a couple of allowances for some charities, because actually one thing I didn't mention is that the actual programme itself, not the grants, were actually open to all different organisations as well. So this just helped us support more businesses. And just a couple of case studies as well. So this was Abexa Limited, based in Bar Hill. We funded them £8,000 for some battery storage. And again, they've said that the Green Business Impact Programme helped them to create a net zero map and apply for grants. And it's actually helped towards the environmental targets. Again, another local small business, Bushell Box Farm, based in Willingham, and we were able to fund some solar panels and a new battery at their farm shop. And our biggest scheme that we funded was Shepworth Wildlife Park Limited and the charity. And again, as you will see from their comment, that the fund was able to support and allow them to focus on their energy aspects of their business and charity, and that actually that they will they'll really receive the benefits from this programme. So for South Cambridgeshire, the PECT has estimated that we will have 75.92 tonnes of carbon savings per annum just for South Cambridgeshire alone. Again, I'll just put a bit of an image in there for context. When I kind of think of, how much does 1 tonne of carbon dioxide look like, I think that just gives a really good visual context. So again, some of the lessons learnt from this programme. Initially, onboarding of the participants was quite slow and did actually require local authority intervention. And I think it was quite obvious in the programme that actually South Cambridgeshire, especially in our economic development team, having business engagement officers and going out to be able to speak to businesses, had a real impact on not just for this programme, but for some of our other grant schemes as well, having that face-to-face contact and just literally going around doing a bit of door knocking and saying, hey, we've got these schemes open, again, that was really well received by our local businesses. The business time to work with the consultants to work out the baseline emissions was challenging. So again, our businesses are very busy doing their normal day stuff, delivering, you know, their normal business activities, and they did feedback that actually it was quite a challenge. PECT was working with them on a one-to-one basis, trying to work out their baseline emissions, and trying to work with them to what they could implement. So again, that was very challenging for our businesses, as well as our consultants actually, who were there to support those businesses. We did originally start the fund with £5,000 grants. We were hoping that, you know, with the 10% we might get a bit more. But again, businesses were coming back and saying, actually, that was not enough money for them to implement anything worthwhile, which in hindsight, I think was a very valid point. And at points during the grant scheme, we did increase it up to £15,000 and the uptake was much higher. Our businesses did say that actually match funding was a challenge for them. And again, alongside some of the SPF funding programs, businesses just have enough really to pay their staff at the moment. So trying to find those additional bits of money, and again, you know, through our Improving High Streets grant, for example, you know, businesses have come back and said, actually, that £20,000 has made such a big difference, or the £15,000 to their operational costs. One thing we hadn't really considered actually at the beginning of the programme was planning permission, especially for solar panels. So again, this kind of, we had to, and again, if we were to run a similar scheme, that would actually have to be factored within the programme's timelines. Cambridge City uptake was much less actually. And again, that really surprised us, high density of businesses. We thought that the grants would be allocated quite quickly, but I think we quite soon realised that actually a lot of the businesses actually were leasing, they didn't own the buildings, or actually a lot of the buildings had shared ownership. So actually for those businesses to try and get permissions to put solar panels on the roof, that was quite difficult. So overall, again, these are very much, at this point, high-level outcomes and outputs. And these are the outcomes and outputs that we have to report for the whole programme to the combined authority, which then get reported to central government. So overall, we had really good outputs. I think, again, the number of businesses receiving non-financial support, so those were those that went through and did the workshops. Actually, we reached quite a few additional businesses in our original targets. Again, we had overall 75 grants were distributed, and again, all the businesses had to undertake the programme workshops in order to receive those grants. And again, lots of the remaining ones actually are what businesses are reporting back to us. So again, number of businesses with increased sustainability, for example, they're much higher than our original target. So overall, I think that was really good. And then jobs safeguarded. Again, this is just based on survey results. It's very hard for us to measure. So I'll just take that one with a slight caution. But again, if businesses are reporting that, I think that's still a really good output, because obviously if they're saving in their energy costs, they're able to pay more staff. And here's just some high-level details around some of the survey results from the grant recipients. Again, 89% agreed that the programme helped improve their business's environmental sustainability. I'm not going to read all of them, but again, I think the 63.2 agreed it helped reduce their running costs and in the cost of living. I think this is really important for our businesses. And again, the overall, if all the net zero roadmaps are taken into consideration, and the businesses actually implement them, that actually, you know, so much, is it 1.5 tonnes of carbon emissions will be reduced over the next 5 years. So again, it's really hard to measure that, but that would be the hope if all those businesses were to undertake their 5-year business, 5-year zero reduction plans. So what's next for us? You may or may be aware that we did actually have, we do have some additional SPF funding for 25-26. We did actually allocate another 90k to fund another Green Business Impact Programme. However, this underwent a mayoral review and the programme was stopped. We have uncertainty around securing next additional funds, but we do endeavour to continue to seek additional funding revenues. The team also work really hard with businesses. Like I said earlier, we've got business engagement officers and we go out and speak to our businesses. On our website, again, we do have our green business pages where we can signpost to additional resources. But the hope for the team is that we could actually secure some additional funding. But again, without the next budget review, we're not quite sure where the next round of SPF and rural will be. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you very much for coming to talk to us about that. It's really good to hear about that scheme. Councillor Peter Sanford.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Catherine, for the presentation. £250,000 on consultancy fees took a big chunk out of the pot. What particular consultancy expertise was needed, and was it all spent on a single consultant or spread across multiple consultants?
So we had Alia, who were responsible for the programme management side of things, onboarding participants and running the grant scheme, essentially. I think actually the real value was with PECT. So I didn't include a copy of one of the sustainability net zero roadmap plans, but I thought actually when I've got a printed copy here if anybody was interested. But again, having a look through this, you can see where all the work has gone. There's an awful lot of technical expertise, and that's where the majority of the funding went, in terms of consultancy fees, I should say.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Peter Fane.
Thank you for the presentation. I mean, I would say that the number of businesses that took this up, 46, was nearly twice the target number. Of course, I don't know the size of the businesses by comparison, but that is a good sign, particularly as those businesses delivered real reductions in carbon emissions and increase in sustainability. You commented on the match funding. I would actually be quite unsympathetic to firms who think that 10%, having to find 10% of the funds themselves is a challenge because they are making real savings. And my experience on the other side of advising firms who are applying for funds is that the good schemes, this is not a problem. If you're serious about the project, finding 10% match funding for something that will save you a lot of money is not a real obstacle. And I think we should be wary of, sometimes businesses see something as being free money and they don't therefore design it as well as they might. They don't respond as well to the consultants. So I would be unsympathetic to businesses who found that a problem. I'm very glad that clearly the programme managed to get over that initial obstacle.
I tend to agree with you, and I think it's that jump from small to large businesses. So I think, for example, we have a hairdressers, and they would not be able to put the solar panels on without our help. But there's perhaps larger businesses that, again, you know, they do have that leeway in their budgets. So again, I'm not quite sure how we work out those who really, really need it from those who actually it's a nice thing to have. But again, it's, you know, working through and asking for their accounts like we do on some of our other grant schemes as well, such as the Rural England Prosperity Fund.
Councillor Jeff Harvey.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting, just following on a bit from that, almost I might imagine that larger businesses, although they probably have more potential to reduce their energy costs. Actually, they have more likely to be a more stable and more profitable sort of underlying business, and therefore the problem actually is getting the attention of somebody who has the authority to kind of approve the involvement in such a scheme. Whereas actually for smaller businesses, you know, the impact on their cost base might be more significant. But I do think, I mean, I think this has been a huge success, and actually there's an intangible here, because I think one of the biggest obstacles to, for example, large-scale solar, onshore wind is that people quite rightly want to see solar panels on industrial units. So I think that's been a real beef that people have had for a long time, and I think rightly so. And you know, for a long time, I think this was a problem with rateable values and VAT, and it just seemed to be a sort of real roadblock there in terms of, you know, these kind of, especially on large warehousing, you think it was absolutely perfect. So, but I think so. There's a sort of hidden benefit in this, in that it's helping to show the general public that we are doing something about this unused roof space, as well as trying to push forward on larger schemes.
And actually, can I just add to that as well? I really agree with that as well, in terms of perhaps it's that engagement piece. And I know when we were first discussing and setting up this programme, actually, we didn't want it to be just about the grants. We really wanted the businesses to start thinking about their sustainability journey. And perhaps you've just given me food for thought for something that we could do, which perhaps doesn't necessarily end up with us sending out grants, but actually is about that getting people getting businesses invested in that sustainability piece, if they're not already doing so.
That's great. Thank you very much for coming and speaking to us. I really hope that we do find a way to keep going with this really interesting and helpful work for our district. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so item 8 is the Zero Carbon Communities Programme update. I've got here that there was an error in Appendix B of this report, which has been fixed on the online version, but for any members who are using hard copy agendas, those changes will be drawn out as part of the presentation. So I'm hoping Ellie is on top of that, because she's here to give us the report. Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this report provides an update on the Zero Carbon Communities programme, which includes the annual grant scheme, the quarterly newsletter and the annual conference, as well as various communications which we undertake throughout the year. The recommendation is that the committee notes this report. So a bit of detail on the first section, which is around round 7 of the grant, which is the most recent round of grants which were funded through the Zero Carbon Communities scheme. And a summary of these can be found in Appendix B. And I will just find the amendment for you. And that is just the the third project funded under the carbon reduction category, just drawing attention to that, just the names being updated around it being Dry Drayton Parish Council. So funding has been awarded to projects in the 7th round of the scheme, and the scheme once again accepted applications under both the Reducing Carbon Emissions and Community Engagements theme. And so a workshop was held for applicants before the grant opened, to allow for applicants to share ideas, and for some initial idea sharing and questions to be answered about potential applications as well. So in round 7 of the scheme, 23 applications were received, which is an increase on the 16 we received last year. And so it should also be noted that the standard of applications received this year was very high, so it made the scoring quite tight in the end. And the total amount available was 152,000, and so with the tight scoring, given that 2 projects both scored 77%, a decision was made that an additional £9,291 was made available. And yeah, so details of the projects funded can be found in Appendix B. Unsuccessful applicants were offered feedback at the time for being, so they were offered feedback at the time to allow them time in advance to sort of future rounds of the scheme and to improve their applications, and are encouraged to get in touch with the team if they're still keen on undertaking their measures to understand how they might be able to strengthen future applications. And it should be noted that following on from the Grants Advisory Committee this year, a workshop will be held in February with members of the Grants Advisory Committee and this committee to review the schemes as a whole. And then just touching on round 6, so every year we ask projects to complete end of project reports, and so we've just received these in from those successfully funded under round 6, and we've received now 9 out of 11 of these. 1 has an extension and 1's still outstanding, and the report details some of the outcomes of the projects, which is really nice to see, and it's really good to see that we're getting measurable outcomes not only from the projects which are installing solar panels and things like that, where you'd expect to be able to see those measurable outcomes, but we're seeing them from some of the wider projects such as the repair cafes and other projects like that. And then just touching on some of the communications which have been undertaken throughout the year. So we've got our Zero Carbon Communities Facebook page. We've got a mailing list of 600 subscribers who receive our quarterly Zero Carbon Communities newsletter. And so there's sort of some details around metrics in the report around the uptake of that. But we'll be looking at developing and sort of in the draft climate and nature strategy, we propose developing a comprehensive communications plan which will include which will include some of the feedback that we've had from different points of contact that we've had with our residents and communities and things like that. So we're sort of listening to what people want to hear more about or sort of think should be communicated more, and trying to incorporate that into our programme of communications throughout the year. And then finally, just touching on the Local Climate Action Conference. So that was held this year in last month in October. So the event had 71 attendees and from 50 different organisations. And so there were talks and sessions on a wide range of topics, as well as a workshop on the climate and nature strategy, which was in its consultation period at the time. And so we got some really, really helpful feedback from the conference on that. And following a survey which we sent out to everyone who attended the conference afterwards, we got some really helpful feedback, which was generally positive. And then there was some also useful comments on how we can improve it for future years, which we'll endeavour to take forward where we can, and take those forward in future years. But I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank officers previous project officer Orla, who's worked on our communications throughout the year and worked on the delivery of round 7 of the grant scheme, and then also Kathy, who is currently working on the grant scheme and who did a huge amount of work on the Local Climate Action Conference. So I'd just like to recognise the officers and the hard work that went into those elements of the programme. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie, for that introduction. And yes, I'd like to echo for the whole committee, thank you to the team for all of that work. We are really grateful and proud of what this council is doing. Has anyone got any questions or comments they'd like to raise on the report? Okay. Well, can I then? Just quickly.
Uh,
Sorry, Councillor Bhattacharya. Thank you for waving.
Hi, thank you. Uh, Thank you, Ellie. Thank you. Nice, very nice presentation. I always emphasis on the education. And can you explain, or even with the zero carbon, you just presented the report that with the measurement and how we succeeded a couple of our plans. But can you also explain that how we can educate our youth and younger generation, the children, the school, the college, where the children also need to be um, need to learn basically, and how we can proceed uh, involving children, youth in the zero carbon planning for the on behalf of council.
Absolutely, thanks. Yeah, for your question. It's a really good one. And over the last year or so, we've been running a program called the Climate Education Program, and that is in partnership with PECT, and that supports 9 schools, I think it is, we have on the program. With their climate action, and so we'll be getting some information sort of shortly on some of the outcomes that they've had on the actions that they've been undertaken, and I believe that our air quality colleagues are also going to be touching on that a bit later on in the work that they've been doing in collaboration with schools on that project. But yeah, that's been something which we've been doing over the course of this year, slightly separate, but we can hopefully capture some of those outcomes and maybe take something back to this committee on some of the outcomes of that, and how we plan to engage young people in the future as well, as we recognise that it is a really important element. And yeah, where possible and where schools are enthusiastic to engage with us, then yeah, absolutely, we're happy to get in touch and speak about what options might there be to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the zero carbon grant scheme and how you got so many highly rated applications. I just wondered if that is from the people who've attended your calls, and if it is from people who've applied before and have had that help and support to up the quality of their application. I guess I'm just asking, how much work is that for the team to get such high rated applications?
So I think it was a bit of a mix this year. So we had we do the annual Zero Carbon Communities grant, but we also had the Net Zero Villages grant scheme, which took place earlier on in the year. So we had a few projects who weren't successful over that grant scheme, and we provided feedback at the end of that as well. So some of them came through that process, and we provided feedback on their applications as well. And then it was a mix of providing some application support and helping applicants where it's appropriate and where we can to support them in their applications. So yeah, but I think it's a balance in making sure that we're giving appropriate and fair levels of support to all applicants.
Of course, thank you very much. It is good to hear though that there were such good applications. Okay, let's go on to Councillor Harvey.
So I was just going to follow up on that, because I think one of the things that's happening in Borsham Ward, which sort of about 5 or 6 constituent parish councils, is sort of information sharing between. I think we had West Wickham and Trevor Hall really took the lead on that, and then he's sort of passed that knowledge on to Borsham. Been successful this year, and I think we've also had the Church Hall in Borsham probably was successful the year before. So I think that's a really encouraging outcome from the scheme in general.
Okay, great, thank you. On to Councillor Martin Khan, please.
I simply want to say congratulations on the outcome this year, but I think this is showing that it's this new scheme that was brought in by this administration 8 years ago, or nearly 8 years ago now, and I think it's an example of how successful it's been and the value, and congratulations.
Thank you, and then on to Councillor James Rickson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I echo the same sentiment, really. Like, well done for all the hard work from yourself and all the officers involved. I think it's great. I think it's great to see that there's such positive uptake. And I think it's also really good that this continues as well. And then, you know, one of the main things about sustainability is that, you know, it's able to continue you know, regularly and into the future. And I think this consistency and consistency of support that you give local businesses and local groups is fantastic. And look forward to the next local climate action conference, because I've only ever heard very good things about it. So thanks.
Okay, great. So I think everyone has spoken who'd like to. So thank you again for that report. It's for noting. So I think as a committee we've commented and noted. So thank you. Okay, so we're an hour and a half in and we've still got 3 items left. I just wondered if anyone would like us to take a short 5-minute break, or if we're okay to continue. Okay, yes, I've had some yeses. So if we could just take a few minutes to break and we'll be back in a 5. Great. Welcome back, everyone. We're just about to start on agenda item 9, Biodiversity Duty Report. We previously discussed the plan for this report in the July meeting, and this time we're looking at the completed report, which has been put together and is being presented by Kathy Wanyi-Lin. Miss. Okay. Yes, so we're going to go on to this item in just a moment.
Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you.
So I'll just provide a little bit of the background. So the biodiversity duty is a statutory obligation requiring local authorities and planning authorities to conserve and enhance biodiversity. The Environment Act 2021 requires all local authorities to report on actions which fulfill the biodiversity duty. Local planning authorities are also required to report on actions contributing to the biodiversity net gain during the reporting period. The reports must also include plans for future actions to fulfill the biodiversity duty over the following 5-year period. Our biodiversity actions over the past 5 years have been guided by the Zero Carbon and Doubling Nature Action Plan, which formed the basis of the biodiversity duty report. So the report has 5 main sections, and I'll just briefly go through each one as we go along. So section 1 of the report outlines SCDC's biodiversity duty actions, including our current and emerging strategies, an overview on the areas managed for nature, including on land, which is part of our social housing estate, and within awarded watercourses. Community action and engagement, including the ZCC and community chest grants, 6 Free Tree Scheme, and other engagement activities such as climate and environment fortnight, the annual climate conference, and nature-related communication through SCDC publications. Within this section, we also highlight our influence through partnerships with other authorities and conservation groups to determine strategic sites, hubs, and corridors for nature. Section 2 details GCSP's approach to fulfilling our biodiversity net gain obligations, which came into effect on February 12th, 2024. BNG is being achieved on and or off-site for all applicable new developments. This section reports on the BNG unit sales data at the 8 BNG offset sites and details about 12 sites within Section 106 agreements, which will provide BNG on-site. It also includes future planning actions for biodiversity, which includes continuous monitoring and facilitation of BNG delivery, and the Miyawaki Woodland Creation Project in Camborne. Reporting on this section is shared with Cambridge City, reflecting the shared nature of our planning service. And Section 3 of the Biodiversity Report reflects on our actions to fulfill the biodiversity duty over the past 5 years, based on the actions from the Doubling Nature and Zero Carbon Action Plan. Appendix A compiles the annual progress report from 2021 to 2025 against our 16 actions. And Appendix B further expands on these actions and other actions outlined in Section 1, which may not have been captured within the action plan, highlighting updated achievements and future plans. And I want to give a special thanks to Council colleagues who provided these updates. Section 4 looks at SCDC's actions for biodiversity in relation to relevant strategies. This section identifies areas where our actions align with relevant strategies, but also identifies gaps and further opportunities to protect and enhance biodiversity. While the main report summarizes each strategy, detailed considerations and analyses can be found in Appendix E. And finally, Section 5 introduces the strategies which will inform our biodiversity duty actions moving forward. And these include the SCDC corporate plan, the draft climate and nature strategy and action plan, which is also included as Appendix F, and the draft Greater Cambridge local plan. In terms of publication of the report, in accordance with DEFRA's reporting guidance, The Council's biodiversity duty report must be published within 12 weeks of the reporting end date of 1st January 2026. The officer recommendation is to publish the biodiversity duty along with all appendices on 1st of January 2026. It will be published on SCDC's website on the climate and environment pages, and GCSP shall also provide a link to the report on their website. Leading up to the publication date, please forward all comments and suggested amendments to climate and environment at scams.gov.uk. The final draft will be reviewed by the head of service before publication. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for summarising 4 and 5 years of work for us in one report. That's really great to see. Is there anything anyone would like to raise or any comments? Okay, Councillor Martin Khan, please.
It's a very comprehensive report covering many actions, and it's rather striking when one reads through how much that has been done, which I think we're pretty proud of. The only point I'd like to return to is what I was saying about the local nature recovery strategy, is that we have powers of things we could do, which we have not done because we haven't had a parks and gardens or green spaces service in practice. We're the only district in the whole of Cambridgeshire which doesn't have one. And so we haven't tended to concentrate on that. And it's at the moment when local government and organisation is going to come up, our powers and opportunity, the powers will change and the resources will change. It's very important that we include these additional potential things that we could do if we'd had these. So I'm talking particularly about local nature reserves. It could be a recreational facility opportunity. So it could be green spaces or country park or these sort of activities, which we haven't done in the past, apart from one at country park, but which now, at the moment of reorganisation, we might be able to do. Reorganisation is a very useful time in one way. When it last happened in 1974, I'm old enough to remember that. The factory reorganisation meant that people re-looked at their structures and the way the local authority was organised, and could then allocate in the new situation to do more things than they would have done before. And so it's a matter of striking while the iron is hot. And that's after what politics is about, is finding the right moment to do things when the opportunity is right, when there's a benefit from doing things that you would like to promote. So I want to emphasise that as a particular importance at this time, and thinking back in terms about the strategy, how we might approach it. And also to emphasise the importance of opportunistic activities. I think we tend to underlie that, but I mean, I worked in a local authority on countryside and recreation management for 20 years. The thing that struck me is the things that you really got done were at a moment when an opportunity arose. And I think you can have as many strategies as you like, but in fact, what will happen will be when the opportunity strikes. I remember one particular feature that I did when I was there was, and it's done often with cooperation with the other organisations, not necessarily yourself, was when we had the Forestry Commission was selling off woodland, patches of surplus woodland. We bought one patch. I managed to persuade the Wildlife Trust to buy the patch at a very good price. And I looked recently at this. This was 40 years ago it was bought. And since then, the site has been a focus for further work, further extension. Now it's about 4 or 5 times the size and covers the whole area. The opportunity taken then, opportunistically, then arose to developing a whole hill, basically, which had been purchased and a much wider resource. So these things, that is really important, that you provide provision in your future plans to take account of that and specify it, because otherwise it will be ignored by the structures that you're working in. So that's my comment, but congratulations on a very comprehensive report.
Thank you, Councillor.
Would you like to reply to any of that?
Just to touch on LGR, and I think, yeah, we recognise that it does present a real opportunity, and I think working with other departments as well, sort of like roadside verges and things like that, I think it presents a real opportunity to link up more and make the most of those kinds of opportunities as well. So we'll definitely be looking to work closely with colleagues and other local authorities moving forward.
But beware, don't get submerged in a larger department, because departments in local authorities work like little empires. And if you're a small body in a large department, you will find you won't have the influence that you would like to have. So that's just a thought when you go in there.
Okay, thank you. I can't see any questions up top or down here. I just had like 2 small questions, if that's okay. Okay. Thank you. So it was just about on page 247, it talks about the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough County Wildlife Sites Handbook, and that they ask that our local plan provides policies that protect the county wildlife sites, and it's mentioned a couple of times in the report that we don't have anything like that in our policies. So I just wondered if that's something that is under consideration, or if it's sort of already covered by other policies. And then I was also wondering, as our planning policies might change in the future to have more nature, more tree canopy and all different things in it, is there any value in thinking about how we enforce those kinds of planning obligations as they come forward? You know, we have all these different things that developers will have to do, and our enforcement might have to be looking at different things from what they're used to. So I just wondered if there's any value in thinking about the policies that they work to and their training and funding, to if any changes are needed to help us bring forward the new policies in the new emerging local plan. Thank you.
Thank you, and this may be one I have to take away for planning colleagues, and to I guess make reference or sort of be able to properly reference where the draft local plan sort of references the county wildlife site. So I'm afraid I'll have to take that one away. I don't want to make an educated guess on that one.
I know, that's fair. I have tried to read it all through and I don't know the answer either, so I do understand. Oh, Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you. Just to try and answer that, yes, we are aware that sometimes developers don't actually deliver some of the landscape that they get planning permission for. We actually have been looking into that and are now going to make sure that going forward, there is a process of, I think, signing them off, really. But of course, we do rely on communities and parish councils to inform us when things aren't being delivered as they should. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Is there anything else anyone would like to raise on this item? Okay, so for this one, it's a little different to we normally have. It's recommended that the Climate and Environment Advisory Committee reviews the Biodiversity Duty Report and provides comments, which I think we have done. And then it's also that it recommends that the lead cabinet member for the environment approves the proposed approach for the publication of the report. So for that, I've been informed we need a proposer and a seconder for part B. So Councillor Khan, are you happy to propose? And Councillor Sanford to second? Great, thank you. So does everyone agree that we can approve the proposed approach? Agreed? Brilliant, thank you very much. Is that all okay, Habs? Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. So on to item 10, which is the air quality update. We had an appendix A and B that were published as a supplement to the agenda yesterday. I had a chance to look at that. I have asked that if there's any key points in that the team would like to highlight, that they could do that in their presentation, just because we haven't had very long to look, so thank you. We have Holly Diggins and Connor Empringham Green here for this item. So can I hand over to you both for your presentation? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for welcoming us to this committee today. Firstly, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce myself, as I'm relatively new to the council. So I'm Holly Diggins, the new scientific officer within the environmental planning team, specialising in air quality. The last time we came to SEAC, I believe you would have been spoken to around the Greater Cambridge Air Quality Strategy by my colleagues. So today is really an opportunity to update you on some of the activities that we've undertaken this year, mainly focusing on key priority 3, which is around our community and engagement and promotion, and key priority 4, which is around our monitoring activities. So apologies for the late submission of Appendix A and B, which is around our monitoring activities, but I will give you a brief summary of those reports when we get to that section. I would now like to hand over to my colleague Connor to talk through some of our outreach activities that we've done this year.
Thank you very much. Just to give you guys an overview, I've got some nice pictures up of the various kind of activities that we have been doing. So starting in November 2023, as part of our key performance indicators, we were looking at new ways that we could engage in the local community, in particular with our sort of air quality work. And we kind of agreed in the team that a program we would create, and a program was created, and that included things such as air quality quizzes, science experiments that we could take to young people, and as you can see in that central picture, the creation of various air quality superheroes, my personal favourite. Initially, we were targeting schools, trying to get in, particularly primary schools. We did have some difficulties getting in, and that's mostly to do with getting into timetables, with the schools being very, very tight, and as well as the curriculums that they had going on. So we pivoted reasonably quickly into scout groups, where we had a significant amount of success, starting first with the Caxton scout group. I went off myself to do a nice seminar and had a very nice time. It lasted about an hour. And the big winner was, in fact, the air quality quiz, which the children absolutely loved and asked to do twice, which was good. Looking to capitalise on this, we quickly spoke to the comms team about our successes, and we got a couple of posts out, which were well received on our social media. And then very quickly after that, I was invited to come along to Bourne Scouts, which once again was very well received. We were then looking at ways to get this out to more places, encourage it, do as many seminars as we possibly could. And while speaking to the climate and environment team, I was put in contact with PECT, which is the Peterborough Environment City Trust, and they're a local charity which looks to protect and enhance the environment in Peterborough and Cambridgeshire more widely. Through this, as you can see from pictures 1 and 3, we were very lucky to be invited along to their yearly event, which is held at the reasonably new Anglo-Ruskin campus in Peterborough. We saw well over 100 children with the seminar, and it was incredibly well received, and we received quite a lot of positive local news coverage, which we were very, very happy about. But looking forward, we're planning on looking at what went well and what didn't go so well, and really getting to the point where we try and continue innovating about what is the best way to engage with people. Some of the stuff worked really, really well. You can see my little science experiment on the first picture. That's where you place a candle in like a jam jar, and you close the lid, and you can see the air pollution. It's a very simple experiment. But yes, that's basically what we've been doing with regard to our sort of outreachy work. And I will now pass back to Holly.
Thank you very much. So another angle we've used to promote air quality this year is around using the National Awareness Days. To varying degrees of success, we've done some promotional work and messaging around this year, namely a social media campaign promoting Car Free Day for the first time. Unfortunately, some residents took this as an opportunity to make criticism on our 4-day week rather than focus on the air quality messaging around this campaign. So we've taken that on board and learned some lessons, and we will look to reshape some of our messaging next year around these key national awareness days, mainly with more on-the-ground promotion rather than focusing on social media messaging, which obviously can attract quite a lot of negative comments. And linking on to that is an upcoming promotional day around Clean Air Night on January the 22nd, the theme of which is shining a light on the uncomfortable truth around wood burning. We are complementing this awareness day with an article in the South Cambs magazine, which focuses on providing residents with the facts and understanding of the health implications associated with domestic indoor burning, so they can make an informed choice as to whether or not to light their fire or log burner this winter. And the article also provides alternative suggestions to keeping warm this winter, such as heating yourself, heating the room you're in, and how residents can burn more responsibly if that is the kind of only option. This is sorry, I should have moved on to that slide. Some of the key points around that campaign and an extract that you will be seeing in the South Cambs magazine winter edition. I'll now present some of our key monitoring activities we've undertaken this year, which is key priority 4 of the Greater Cambridge Air Quality Strategy. The first is our annual status report. So our annual status report is a requirement from DEFRA for all local authorities to submit and document their air quality monitoring results and the data and the actions that we are taking to improve air quality within the district. So we've submitted our ASR to DEFRA in June 2025 and it's been accepted and made available on our website. Some of the key highlights is that air quality is generally very good within South Cambridgeshire and it continues to meet the relevant air quality objectives. You can see in the table, which is kind of an extract of some of the key findings of the report, that our highest values are well under the UK air quality standards and we are well on the way to meeting our interim targets that we've set out in the Greater Cambridge Air Quality Strategy of meeting 20 UGM for NO2 and PM10 and then 10 for PM2.5. We also reference the World Health Organization air quality guidelines within our strategy, which are ambitious targets to be met as soon as can be achieved. There's a general understanding there's no safe level of air pollution, so they are very ambitious, but in the long term, that is where we want to be, and that's what we continue to work towards. So it's a good news story, really, but there's still some way to go. And then one specific study that I wanted to point out to update you on today is our Zephyr monitoring studies. We've been doing a lot of work with schools and studies outside of schools to monitor air pollution, and this one is one that has been very successful. Comberton Village College actually contacted ourselves at South Cambs with concerns that buses were idling outside of the college at drop-off and pick-up. So we deployed a mobile air quality monitor, a Zephyr, to monitor nitrogen dioxide, PM10 and PM2.5 for 9 months. This is just one of the extracts from that report, but the data clearly showed short-term peaks in NO2 emissions in 15-minute intervals at pick-up and drop-off times during term times only. So this graph shows the levels a week before and a week after the Christmas holidays and during the Christmas holiday period. I think it's kind of speaks for itself. This graph, the visual representation shows that there is a real reduction when the buses are not there, and during term time, higher levels of NO2 within those 15-minute periods. So on the back of this, we contacted Cambridgeshire County Council, who hold the contract for the school buses, to see if any action could be taken to re-educate their drivers and remind them of the dangers of idling. And they were very receptive to this and very quick to action this, and they contacted all their bus operators, writing to them to remind them of their anti-idling policy. And also since September 2025, the school bus fleet has been operating to a higher emission standard than ever before. So that's Euro emission standard 5 rather than 4 that they were previously operating. So the fleet has been upgraded. So hopefully, if we were to do this study again for any reason, we would see lower levels of NO2 emissions. But that is a brief overview of what we've been doing in our team this year. And so thank you very much for listening, and we're happy to take any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Is there anything anyone would like to raise? Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Timmy Hawkins.
It's quite impressive that you were able to do that study and then get the action that has reduced that problem or moved it. So no, keep it up. Thank you.
Councillor Peter Fane.
Yes, very interested in the Zephyr air quality monitoring programme, and I'm wondering where else that could usefully be replicated, particularly outside schools, but there may be other sites too, and whether you are looking for particular sites to go on to the next stage on that.
Thank you for that question. Yes, our Zephyrs are really useful because they're very mobile, easy to erect, and then can give us results really quickly. So one new area that we are actually about to deploy is to support Cambridgeshire County Council in their School Streets initiative. So this is particular one is in Bar Hill, where they are wanting to implement a school street but don't have the data to back up the reasons why, and have been facing some opposition. So we are going to deploy it to get some data prior to them implementing a school street, and then hopefully keep that Zephyr up during the trial period of the school street to see and to be able to show that actually implementing a school street, as well as being safer for the students and the residents, actually has health air quality impacts which knock on to positive health benefits. So that's one way.
Brilliant, thank you. So Councillor Bhattacharya online, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. This is not a question, but just an update of minimizing the car transportation. We do have WhatsApp group within community, Camborne to north of Cambridge, like Science Park, and Camborne to Addenbrooks. So the neighbors and the friends, like all the neighbors, they shared the car. Instead of taking 5 cars, they take 1 car instead. And this is happening for a long time. So this is another idea of reducing the number of cars. And that you can mention, or you can promote, or you can motivate the people. And another one is that I was seeing the PICT presentation. I would like to invite those trainings for the robotics children in Camborne and Cambridge as well.
Thank you, Councillor Bhattacharya. Okay, and then on to Councillor Bearpark, please.
Yeah, just a comment really. I was just going to follow on from what Councillor Hawkins said about, what's interesting about the monitoring that you did. You did monitoring at one location, but obviously it had potentially impacts all over the place throughout the whole, for all the buses at lots of other schools. So that was really interesting. But I suspect it's one of those things you're going to have to keep coming back to, because bus operators will probably slip back into their own ways, maybe with more idling in the future. So yeah, just a comment really.
Great, thank you. Do you have anything you'd like to come back? Are you planning to go back to other schools?
So we have done quite a few other Zephyr studies. All of the reports can be found on our website at the schools that we have done studies outside of. I think obviously we're limited with the number of Zephyrs we have. We have 2 Zephyrs within South Cambridgeshire, and to get any meaningful data, we kind of have to have them up for 6 months so we can compare with kind of national objectives and things like that. So as much as there's kind of a long list of things I'd love to do, and I'd love to go back in maybe a couple of years' time to see compare the levels of emissions outside Comberton, but to be seen in the future, I think.
Great, thank you. Councillor Jeff Harvey, please.
Thanks. Yes, I noticed the reference to the cost of COSI, and there's quite a kind of long game, I think, in terms of readjusting the public, because a lot of people started burning wood because they thought it was environmentally the right thing to do, and now we discover there's a sort of price to pay in other ways. But one of the other hidden costs of COSI, I think, in South Cambridgeshire, given the number of oil-burning villages we've got, are oil-burning Argers, and I think they rely on a sort of Victorian kind of burner design, which, so if you go sort of running in our village in the morning before the car traffic is there, the dominant smell of pollution is actually unburnt kerosene. Actually researched this. You can measure the thermal efficiency of an oil-burning anything by measuring the carbon dioxide content in the flue gas. Turns out that Argers are only 40% efficient, so they're really dreadful in terms of their environmental credentials. But when I challenged Arger on that, they said, well, we don't know what the efficiency is, and we don't need to know because it's classified as a cooking appliance rather than a heating appliance. So I wondered, well, this would be an even longer game, I think, in terms of readjusting public perception of these things. But I just think we need to find some way of retiring this fleet of Victorian appliances. Thank you.
Did you want to come back on anything there?
Yeah, thank you for that. I'd agree. I think there's a lot of work going on in the sector at the moment around kind of other pollutants outside of the NO2 kind of focus that has happened in the last 10, 20 years because kind of technology upgrades in our vehicle fleets on the roads, uptake in electric vehicles means that NO2 is somewhat looking after itself and emissions are reducing, and it's now other pollutants that are becoming we're learning about them. There's a lot more studies around them. So I think there is a long way to go with A, understanding the emissions from some of these other sources, but B, changing public perception and actually, just getting the message out there that it's not just vehicle emissions that are having implications on our health. Thank you.
Councillor Timmy Hawkins.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for letting me come back very quickly. It's just going back to the Comerton Village College study. Is there any way in which, if the students spot a bus that is just leaving its engine running, is there any way of them reporting that so that action can be taken?
That is a good question, and I'm not 100% sure. I know that there's been some really great campaign work, especially that county have done on anti-idling outside some schools, and having the work I'm aware of has mainly been primary schools, but having sort of students act as kind of like local enforcement officers, because to the parents they might understand the kind of anti-idling message more better from the children that it's directly affecting. I'm not sure of anything specific outside of Comerton, but that is a good point, and
I just
we
wonder
can
if it's
take
something
away.
to
Definitely, thank you.
So that at least people know that if they're spotted, they'll be outed. They might stop doing it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Khan, please.
About 2 years ago, I think it was, there was quite a lot of concern about the emissions from tyre wear, fine particulate emissions. It seems to concern seems to have ebbed down a bit, but I just wondered how much of a problem it is and whether we have any information on that and whether we're going to be looking for information on it.
Thank you, yes, that is a good point. I am aware that it's the PM 2.5 emissions from tyre wear that is concerning, and it is something that I'm aware of. I don't know any specific studies and how much it's in the kind of what people are doing to study it at the moment, but it's something that I'm definitely aware of, and especially with the new electric vehicles, people are kind of thinking, oh, this is great, I can drive, and there's no emissions from this vehicle, but it's not true. I understand they're heavier as well, so some of the braking and tyre wear can be actually worse on those vehicles, so it's definitely an area that we are aware of and continue to look into, so thank you.
Great, thank you. So then to James Rickson, please. Councillor Rickson.
Thank you, Chair. So thanks, Connor and Holly for that report. That was great. To build on actually a point that Councillor Bearpart made about repetition, seeing the campaign that you're trailing in is January about log burning stoves. Is that something that can be trailed, or let's say advertised or promoted before that comes as well? So perhaps, I mean, I'd say maybe not maybe every day, but every week, or at least a couple of times, just to say, look, you will be talking about it, or the South Cams will be talking about it. So I think it's a really good point as the winter comes, and it's quite easy to forget, and it shouldn't just be one day that you should be reminded. And so I think that would be quite a good thing. Particularly, I've had that conversation with someone today about how to decarbonise their home and the merits of heating their home with wood fire. So yeah, that was great to see that. And also, perhaps I saw also you had about the alternatives to burning or starting a fire within your home to keep warm, which might be nice to tie in with other teams or other offices, because I think in our retrofit team particularly, they'll be very much aware of other alternatives of sort of what residents could do. So that might be nice to tie in. I don't know quite how, but yes.
I think I'm probably best placed to tackle this one. So we do definitely want to encourage people to burn less, and when they are burning the appropriate fuel sources. We have come across a certain amount of resistance in the past when it comes to wood burning. So it is something that we are very aware it has to be done carefully. For some persons, we are aware that it is their only source of heating, and that being the case, we would never say to anyone, you know, do not burn to warm your house, because that is not the right thing to be saying. With regard to promoting it more, it is something that we are looking at, but we want to do it in the right way. We do not want to give off the wrong impression, and we definitely don't want to be getting potentially negative press come back to us, as has happened before. With regard to the kind of grants and the alternatives, this is something that we are looking at, and we do try and work with our lovely climate team. And we also, one of the projects that I'm involved with is minimum energy efficiency with regard to private sector housing. And so I often am advising people about alternative and more efficient ways to do their house. It's just so happened that I also work in the air quality team, so those two marry up quite nicely. But we are very much looking at what can we do to bring in shareholders as much as possible to make everything more efficient. And from our point of view, the public health impact of air quality is always going to be our primary concern, and what we can do to educate people, whether or not it's customers calling us on the phone for advice, or it's going out and doing these sorts of seminars, or the work that we do on our sort of clean air day, clean air night. So yeah, I know that's not perhaps the response that you were looking for, but it is something that we are looking at, and we just want to make sure that we're doing it right, and we're not bringing potential criticism back to us where we can avoid it.
I was certainly not asking you to draw criticism, to put yourself in a position to draw criticism. No, I think that was great. Yeah, that's exactly what was asking for. So thanks.
Great. So I think that's everyone has had a chance to speak who would like to. So I'd like to thank you again for your report. It was very interesting and a different way of thinking about climate than we normally have, but it touches on so many of the issues that we think about regularly. So thank you very much. So then on to item 11, which is the Materials Recycling Facility, or MRF contract. It's the 6 months update of that. So we have Rebecca Weymouth-Wood here to present this item to us. So thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. Last but not least, okay. So in March this year, the Waste Service began a new contract with a company called Regen for the sorting of our recycling at a Materials Recycling Facility, or MRF, in Newry in Northern Ireland. And the paper brings an update on how the contract is performing, or has performed, over the last 6 months, and also a summary of the observations that officers saw, that includes me, when we went on a site visit to the facility. So both the collection of the recycling from the Waterbeach transfer station and the processing of the recycling at the MRF is taking place as per expectations in the contract. And there's a few things that's just worth highlighting. You know, our monthly reports that we get from the contractor show the amounts collected and the composition of the recycling, and that's all being provided on time for us to meet our national reporting requirements. The material is being sorted and recovered to a high standard, and the plant continues to extract and send for sale 96% of the material it sorts, as required under the contract. The commodity prices being reached over the last 6 months are largely above the typical values that are shown in the market indices, which is testament to the high standard of the sorting achieved by the plant and the quality of the end product. Recycling has been sent to UK and European destinations for actual recycling. And operations continue to be compliant with the Northern Ireland Environment Agency requirements, and there's a copy in Appendix C of the latest inspection records. There have been no health and safety or welfare related issues, including any RIDDOR incidents. And under the new contract, we now have the ability to recycle cardboard Pringle tubes with the inner foil lining, and also toothpaste tubes. So the site visit and UE allowed officers to see, we did see how well the plant was being run and maintained. And also what was very clear was the level of investment that Regen had made, both to maintain the quality of the sorting process and just how they generally manage the site, which ultimately leads to the high quality material that we're seeing at the end. Also in the report, there's a couple of other points, so I'll just run through those as well. So we did also visit another location in Northern Ireland, which is called Warren Point. So the operations by Regen at Warren Point are completely unrelated to our contract, and none of our waste is stored at the site. However, we did want to visit the site because of concerns raised by resident community groups in Northern Ireland about how waste was being stored and the odour from the site. So when we went on the day, we were completely satisfied with what we saw and how Regen were handling all the concerns. And we have confirmation that the Environment Agency in Northern Ireland has confirmed that their operations are compliant. So Regen are really doing whatever they can to satisfy, any of those concerns raised by those community groups in Northern Ireland. So it was just reassuring to see that while we were there. And the last point I wanted to say is that it does remain Regen's intention to build another MRF in the mainland, but we have no further information to share about progress on that just at this time. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your report, Rebecca, and thank you for updating us on the MRF in England, because that is something that we had asked, I had asked for updates on, so thank you for letting us know that that's no more news yet. Would anyone like to ask a question? Okay, yes, thank you. Councillor Peter Sanford.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the update, Rebecca. I'm pleased to hear the facility in Northern Ireland is performing well. What I don't think we've got on top of yet is the communications around this whole arrangement. You touched on it yourself, that there's a lot of confusion, not just in Northern Ireland, but in Cambridgeshire, that we are just sending blue bin waste to Northern Ireland, not grey bin waste. We're not involved with the Warren Point site at all. There also seemed to be an impression, I think it came over when we had a public question in full council, that Regen are going to build this site on the mainland within 6 months, which seems totally unrealistic. I think we ought to look at what other councils are doing. I believe a lot of comparable councils are shipping their blue bin waste directly to mainland Europe, and even further afield to be dealt with. So perhaps we could do sort of follow-up comms to, say this new contract is performing well, but here are a few misconceptions that we need to correct. Perhaps you could look at that. Thank you.
Rebecca, would you like to come back on any point?
Only to say that, more than happy to complete doing communications, until we feel, councillors and others are just reassured about the arrangements, really. As it's a shared waste service, I'm also, going to be doing a briefing at the scrutiny committee in Cambridge City in December, and happy to do an equivalent in South Cambs, obviously, as well. That's what's required.
Thank you.
Thank you. Was that all okay for you, Councillor Sanford? Great, thank you. So to Councillor Jeff Harvey now, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I suppose one of the sort of concerns within the public is the cost of transportation, and I noticed in the report, I think we're using 75% backhaul capacity or something like that. But I was just wondering, is that sort of subject to double counting? I mean, so what are the sort of primary uses of those HGVs that create the sort of backhaul capacity, if you like? And I was sort of wondering, well, what kind of lorries could actually be dual use with recycling material and, for example, manufactured product or agricultural products?
Yes, so good question. So yes, I think it's something like 86% of the journeys are done on backhauling arrangements, and that's because Regen obviously have contracts with other councils and with end destinations and processors in the mainland as well. So they are able to use the same vehicles that are coming here anyway to fulfill those elements of other contracts. To then, once they have then done their job and offloaded their recycling, they would then come on to us and pick up our recycling. So that's the way it works on their logistics. Regen operate, in-house. They've got a whole logistics fleet. They manage it entirely themselves. So they have quite a tight rein on how to organise their fleet. And that is delivering the sorted recycling as well as collecting up recycling for sorting.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that makes sense. Except that I suppose you could then say, well, one man's backhaul is another man's primary trip, and if this is all around recycling, then I suppose you can't really argue with the fact that's causing quite a lot of traffic movement, and therefore, I think as soon as we possibly can, we would all be happy if we were a bit nearer. But anyway, I think it's good that we're able to make the operation as efficient as it possibly can be in the meantime.
Thank you. To Councillor Bearpark, please.
Yes, I have a question about traffic as well. The Waterbeach facility is in my ward, and one of the initial concerns about this was whether it would increase the traffic on the A10. And I think probably everyone's been assured that it hasn't, because bin lorries go in, and then the waste goes off to Northern Ireland in the same way as it would have had to have been transported after processing at Waterbeach. But I suppose my question is, do you know what's happening with the Waterbeach facility that was processing the waste, and whether Talia have got any plans for that, and whether that then might draw in more traffic to the Waterbeach site?
Another good question. I mean, ultimately, it's probably a question that needs to be directed straight to Talia, who run that site. My understanding is that they offer a commercial waste recycling service themselves as an organisation, so they were using the plant to continue processing that facility. Last I heard, I think that was slowing down, and I can't speak as to what their future plans are for that, I'm afraid.
Councillor Peter Fane, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, this was, of course, very controversial when it was first introduced, and there was a lot of criticism for the sustainability implications of carting waste to Northern Ireland. And now that we've seen the contract bedding in, are we in a better position to answer that, to deal with some of the concerns? Could I add a second question? I'm wondering how this relates to the recycling from the household waste recovery sites, whether that is an entirely separate contract or whether there is scope for increasing the degree of recycling at the HWRCs. Is there any scope, for instance, for recovering, I think anything with potential pops in has to be incinerated. Are there alternatives for that through this new contract?
Okay, so first point, one of the things I found most reassuring about visiting the site was to see the degree of the quality of their processes. And I've visited many MRFs over the years, and it's definitely one of the best that I've seen in terms of the level of effort they go to. And the reason that's important is because it all just drives up the quality of the paper and the glass and the plastics, and just means it's a better quality for manufacturers to use. And that's exactly what we want. It's what the government want, which is what the extended producer responsibility regulations that are coming in, that's they want, is they want to close that loop, and behind that loop is driving up quality. So it's a really good thing in my mind that we are partnering with organisations like Regen who are putting in that effort, because that is not the, it's so variable amongst MRFs really as to how much effort they are able to put in. So behind all of that is all of that helps to offset, I believe, any environmental concerns about hauling the stuff there. And that's what we wanted to be sure of, is how good actually are they sorting it, because that goes a long way to addressing concerns about the haulage of it, because really what you're doing is, what you would do is you do a life cycle assessment, wouldn't you, of everything from people buying the products and all the carbon with that, to people then, to us then recycling it, gaining back some of the carbon, and then the carbon that's saved from the manufacturers using a second-hand project. So that's like a larger piece of work really to offset it. So, but in terms of our small little bit in the middle, I think we've got a contractor that is doing their utmost to really run their site in the best way that they can, which definitely would help offset any concerns we've got about, logistics. Second point about HRCs, I can't really answer that. It's a separate contract. It's a county council contract with Talia under their PFI arrangement. So I think that would have to be directed to the county council.
Okay, thank you for telling us all about the site visit. I had a question that was sort of more about the context information that you gave about the new changes to the requirements at MRFs and how that's affecting the capacity of MRFs in the next few years. Because I think you mentioned that the capacity might drop by about 20% over the next couple of years. So I was just wondering if that means that it'll be even more challenging to get a new contract after this one in the future, or are we expecting that? We might have to go even further potentially, or I guess it's speculation, but I was just wondering what you think might happen. Thank you.
Yeah, another good question, really. Yes, it's really hard to know what to say, and it may do. I think you're right. If you're crystal balling it, our last contract lasted 10 years, and at the point of reprocurement, we were in a very different place. MRFs were in a very different place. The whole recycling market was in a very different place. And by the time we need to procure this again in 5 years' time, although we do have a 2-year extension, so we could have this contract for 7 years, but even in that time, things will have changed again. And one of those big players is the impact of this legislation. But MRFs are still going to have a really key role to play in extracting all the packaging that the manufacturers want. So, it's just how are they going to adapt to being able to do that to the best of the ability, because we are, beholden on them to doing that job, for us, really.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, it's a very difficult one to ask. Is there anything else anyone would like to ask? No, so I think we're finished. Do we need to note a note for this one?
Yeah, let's just move on. Yeah.
Okay, yep. So thank you very much, everyone. So then it's on to item 12, which is the forward plan and any other business. Ellie, could I please ask you to give us an update on the next meeting, which is planned for the 27th of January, and any other interesting items in the forward plan? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So 27th of January, we'll have the post-consultation version of the climate and nature strategy. We will have an item on the recap waste management strategy. We'll also have an update on the weekly food waste collection service. We'll have an update on the Council's progress towards achieving its silver carbon literacy certification. A council housing retrofit update, and a Hug2 update.
Wow, that's quite a bit for next time.
Yeah.
Let's hope we have a slightly calmer January for everything else. Thank you very much. And that brings this meeting to a close. So thank you everyone for attending. The next meeting of SIAC is to be held on Tuesday the 27th of January. Thank you. Bye-bye.